Hello everyone, and once again a great many blessings to you all. Today we're going to be talking about the third installment in the 2018 Pagan ABC Challenge. This is Firechild again, and today I'm going to be talking about my sea of choice, crystals. As you can see, I have a lot of different specimens arrayed in the shop for you, and I just want to talk about my personal connection with just a few of them. One of my absolute favorite stones, which I actually do not have on display here, is Carnelian. Well, actually I do. It is on my chakra pendulum, which is in the front, the sort of reddish bead. Carnelian is a stone that I have always, well, ever since my awakening and since I realized that my strongest affinity is fire, Carnelian is a stone that I've always jived with. It helps me sort of stay centered as a fiery being, so to speak. And I've found that I seem to attract citrine to myself. And it's just one of those things. I've talked to a lot of people who feel that in this case, like can attract like. And a lot of times you draw to you either what's for you or what really connects and reverberates with you on a deep level. Another crystal that has always reverberated with me long before my awakening is amethyst, and not just because it happens to be my birthstone, but amethyst is a crystal that I later learned is really good for those with psychic ability, although I'm not too sure if that really applies to me, but it's also good for divination and dreaming to those ends. And amethyst for me is a calming presence, and when I feel that sort of trying to do divination, sometimes it feels like standing on a precipice, and you look out and there's just this sea of endless knowledge. It can be scary, especially if you try to, jump in and you get over your head, literally. Amethyst is a calming presence that helps me face the unknown unafraid. Another stone that I particularly like is tiger's eye. It's often used as protection against malevolent spirits or anyone else who may have malicious intent against you. Tiger's eye has long been associated with protection, and I also find it quite mesmerizing to look at, actually. Let's see who else we have here. We have labradorite. Labradorite is an absolutely beautiful stone. And the very large specimen that you see in the back with the black dragon is one of my personal favorites in my collection, because the whole polished side is nothing but flash, and that was just so exciting for me to find, because a lot of the other specimens that I've seen of that size, the flash is sort of spotty, and this one is just really great. It's also a stone that a lot of people with psychic awareness, or if you do a lot of work with your crown chakra, to me it's just a really great stone for balance. And once again, your definition of what a crystal is for, how you employ a crystal in your work, it might be different. I don't always use a crystal in the textbook way. When I do a ritual, I kind of just reach out, and whatever crystal sort of jumps into my hand that speaks to me and says, hey, let me help, well, that's who we go with. And it's not always the usual suspects. Sometimes in magical practice, it's easy to become overwhelmed and feel run down. Toward the front, you can see a green shard. It sort of looks like glass, but it's actually moldavite. And for anyone who's ever used moldavite, it can be intense. This is one of the most interesting stones to me because it's found usually at the site of places where meteors have crashed into the earth. And as such, it contains a lot of cosmic energy. And this is energy that's outside of our scope as human beings a lot of the time. So it can sort of throw you out of whack, which is why I don't usually use the moldavite without a piece of shungite, which is the shiny black crystal that I have sitting beside it. I love shungite because when I hold moldavite by itself, I feel like I'm on a rocket. I just get propelled up into the highest levels of consciousness, going from 0 to a million miles altitude in 0.3 seconds. It's a rush. But now the very first time I ever held shungite by itself, which I don't usually do for this very reason, it's intensely grounding for me. The first time I held it by itself, I felt the opposite. I felt like I've just fell right through the earth, and I just kept sinking and grounding. It was crazy. Probably didn't help that I had just been touching a piece of moldavite right before, but I do like shungite because of its grounding properties for me. Another crystal that I really love is selenite. Selenite is often used not only to cleanse other crystals, but also to charge them with energy. You can see a cleansing plate sort of in the middle of my array here, as well as a wand just off to the right. Selenite wands for me have always been helpful in my rituals because, as I've said before, my energy can be extremely erratic and unfocused, which isn't always a good thing. So sometimes I need something that sort of pinpoints my energy in a specific direction, and for me, selenite is very good for that. And sometimes it kind of helps to leech off some of my excess energy to be stored later. So it's very, very helpful for me in that aspect. And the charging plate that I have, I use sometimes if I've used crystals for a particular purpose, especially with banishings. I will place the crystals that I employed on the charging plate for cleansing and renewal with positive energy. Let's see here. We also have a couple of pieces of quartz. There's a little quartz point here in the front. I like to use quartz points for similar reasons that I like to use my selenite wand. But I don't use quartz necessarily to focus my own energies as much. I find that quartz helps me draw energy from my surroundings in order to go through rituals. And the quartz helps me a lot. Sometimes I wear quartz when I'm feeling like I'm being battered and just overwhelmed by energies trying to make contact with me. It can be rough and extremely exhausting. So quartz helps me sort of ward those things off. A little side note about quartz. It's often used to siphon off energy and also store it. But I've actually had experiences where the quartz that I was wearing absorbed so much negative energy it actually cracked. And I've seen people that have shattered quartz points. When I notice that the cracks are big, I stop wearing it. And I also will notice if I'm in that bad a shape, sometimes the quartz will actually cloud over. Usually when you buy a quartz point, it's nice and shiny and clear. And once you start to notice there's some clouding, that often means that the quartz is becoming full of a lot of other energy, sometimes negative, and sometimes it just means that it needs a good clearing out. In the very front here, we have my Fluorite chakra pendulum. And I really love this guy because chakra work in divination, it's really interesting to try to employ the two at the same time for me. I'm not the most experienced with chakra work by itself, but I find that whenever I do employ it as a part of my divination, it seems to help me because it sort of helps me realign. I feel the energies going from my root all the way up and out through my crown. It's amazing how intense that experience can be. I often use crystals for realigning and or clearing chakras. And I'm not the only one that does this. A lot of people do. So crystals are helpful in so many ways. They can help boost certain spells like your rose quartz for love. And if you're doing fiery spells, citrine's good. Or it can also help to disrupt any enchantments, especially the malevolent ones, such as Tiger's Eye just kind of puts up a nope shield and says, yeah, this is not happening. But it's really good to sort of get to know your crystals. There's a lot of good books out there that sort of outline traditional aspects of crystals. But I would say just kind of get to know your crystals and let them tell you what they want to do. It might be the opposite of what your textbook will say, but if that's how your crystals want to help you out, well, just let them. I feel that crystals are happier when they're allowed to do what they want to do. And if you listen hard enough, they'll tell you. That's how most of my crystals here came to be with me. I was in a shop or, just perusing somewhere, and I start to hear this little voice calling out to me, and I start looking through boxes of crystals and displays, and the ones that kind of jump out and say, hey, are usually the ones that I say, well, okay, you really want to come home with me. So I think it's good to sort of try to reach out to them as they're also reaching out to you. But those are just my feelings on this subject. Some of you may have much more varied insights on the subject, and we'd love to hear about them. I'm sure that a lot of our other listeners would love to be able to share their experiences with crystals. Tell us what sort of rituals you use with them. Are you one of the people that really believe in cleansing your crystals out after every use? And if so, how do you do it? How do you help your crystals feel comfortable where you are so that they're much more efficient? What do crystals mean to you? Those are just some final thoughts I'll leave. And I will see you again with the next installment in the series. Blessed be and take care.